In my personal opinion, there's few things better than a cozy fireside chat about books. This is what I want to try to recreate today with this relatively unscripted, only lightly edited, more personal format. As you might be able to tell from my other videos, books are not only a hobby of mine, but are also a major source of inspiration for my videos. In this one, I'll explain more about how and what I read. I'll reveal some of my all-time fiction and non-fiction favorites, with a characteristically heavy focus on history, world building, and grand narratives. So, let's put some more wood on the fire, get a cup of hot tea, and get started. Maybe a few information about my reading habits first. Well, how and how much do I read? During my childhood and early adulthood, I read a ton of physical books, mostly from the local library or my parents' home, across almost all genres. Since starting to work and living a real adult life, though, my annual book consumption is now reduced to, I would say, 10 to 20 books. That's not bad, but also far from amazing. One reason simply is that I somehow found my niche of interests and just tend to read more dense and high-quality books now. But admittedly, I'll probably also read less actual books because screens in forms of smartphone and PC take a lot of time. You know what I'm talking about. I also no longer force myself to read or finish certain books in order to reach certain milestones or whatever. Books that don't grip me are paused or even abandoned. It's not uncommon that I read multiple titles in parallel, depending on my mood and the time of the day. For me personally, that makes the whole process feel more enjoyable somehow. Quick overview over my reading setup and the tools I use. For more than 10 years now, I've been reading on a Kindle device. I love the paper ink display with the backlight, which is perfect to read in all kinds of environments, sunny, before sleep. It's portable, has basically endless storage, is easy to put new books in, and also easy to get your digital clippings out. Yes, there are some small downsides reading on a digital device. For example, you can't just flip back and forth from the beginning to the middle of the book. And it's not a very nostalgic feeling, to be honest. But for me, that's now the way I roll, and I really love my Kindle, to be honest. For tracking my book list and for reading status, I use Goodreads. I'm not a super avid user of that platform, but usually make sure to save any book ideas that I hear about, as well as books that I've already finished. There's also an annual reading challenge, which I take part in just to kind of track myself and be able to go back also to previous years. It's kind of the best archive and database I've found so far. Lastly, a relatively new digital tool I added to my reading experience is Obsidian. It's a pretty general and simple note-taking app that I use to store my thoughts in many areas of my life. For books, I always regretted not kind of storing my learnings and highlights from them after reading. So since last year, I made it a habit to store my notes and clippings there in separate files per book, linking key ideas and concepts via connecting the notes. Drawing from this kind of interconnected source library has already proved very useful for brainstorming and also writing scripts. Now onto my non-fiction reading recommendations. Before I go into the list of my favorites here, just a quick note. You will realize that there's a focus on slightly aged books, mostly published between, I would say, the 1980s and early 2010s. That is partially unintended, but partially also on purpose, as I look for high-quality ideas that have stood the test of time and not just shiny new releases. Within nonfiction, my first subcategory here, grand history books, focusing on large time frames and underlying systems. Let me start with a slightly less well-known one, which is Pursuit of Power by McNeill. This presents a sweeping analysis of how the evolution of military technology and social organization has shaped the history of the world over the last millennium. Even though it was published already in 1982, it is still a great and timeless read. Only the last chapters on the Cold War are a bit out of date. Otherwise, I highly recommend it, and it's not by accident my first mention here. Next up are Sapiens and Homo Deus by Israeli author Harari. These works trace the biological and cultural journey of humankind from prehistoric roots to the current times and even to the future. I had put off reading Sapiens for a while, assuming it's just another re-narration of history in just, chronological order. But when I read it finally, the density of novel ideas inside really blew my mind, I have to say. This is a must-read. The third book in this macro-history category is a classic, The Story of Civilization by Will Durant, an expansive 11-volume series that explains art, philosophy, politics of each period of human history. And it's doing this in unimaginable detail. These books were written between 1935 to 1975, but are still referenced today frequently. It's probably hard to read them through in one go, but I just love to open one and read about one snapshot of the past. Durant really shows that the best stories are actually written by history itself. Onwards. Next one, 1493, Uncovering the New World Created by Columbus, by Charles Mann. This book explores the so-called the Columbian Exchange, detailing how the meeting of the old and new worlds created the first truly global ecological and economic framework. Some of the facts and hidden ripple effects mentioned in this book left me just speechless. Amazing to see the huge effects globalization does not only have today, but even had already 500 years ago. Another one of my favorite authors in this genre is Timothy Brook. Notable here for the books I picked, which are Vermeer's Hat and Mr. Selden's Map of China. Brook uses specific artifacts and historical maps to reveal the intricate early modern trade connections that link Europe and China. Easily digestible and often a very fun read with a very, very cool approach. Lastly, Tim Marshall's Prisoners of Geography. That's a look at how physical terrain, so mountains, rivers, coastlines, limits and also dictates to some extent the political and strategic choices of global leaders. For somebody who wants to understand the hidden factors that shape society and the fate of nations, this book is really a great resource and can be really eye-opening. Now on to a few of my favorite biographies. First up, Robert Caro's The Years of Lyndon Johnson. This series is amazing. It is an in-depth and really take a literally in-depth study of the ruthless acquisition and exercise of political power, charting LBJ's rise from rural Texas to the American presidency. So far, 4 books have been released. The Path to Power, Means of Ascent, Master of the Senate, and The Passage of Power, last one in 2012. I can guarantee you have never ever read such a detailed and well-researched biography. Next one is Peter the Great by Robert K. Massie. This biography chronicles the Tsar who forcibly dragged Russia into the modern age by looking toward Western European innovation. Peter was, you can say, a difficult character with lots of both good and bad traits. So this journey through his life and also Russia's history is utterly fascinating. The Snowball by Alice Schroeder. This is an intimate portrait of the investment legend Warren Buffett, detailing the singular focus and investment philosophy that he used to build one of the world's greatest fortunes. If you're even only slightly interested in investing, this is really a must-read for you. Last biography here is The Patriarch, the remarkable life and turbulent times of Joseph P. Kennedy. This was a surprise to me, honestly. I was not aware of the father of JFK before. This book examines his life. He's basically the founder of the 20th century most famous political dynasty. A morally ambiguous, but also a very, very interesting view into wealth, power, and American politics. Now, a small treat at the end, and we're going to fiction. This is not totally in character for this channel, but at the end, I think it's nice to also include a few grand sagas of world-building, narrative history, fantasy, and sci-fi. Let's start actually with sci-fi. First up here is Pierce Brown and his Red Rising saga. This is a fast-paced but still emotionally very deep space opera that follows a low-caste miner, a so-called rat, who undergoes a physical transformation to infiltrate and then dismantle a brutal, color-coded case system from the inside. The action scenes here really rock, and they get better and better. It is like one set piece is following the next. It's extremely entertaining to read, highly recommend. Another masterclass in sci-fi is the Three-Body Problem trilogy by Chinese author Cixin. Not only is this interesting because of the largely China-based setting, but also because the author has ideas and timelines that are extremely ambitious and unfold into a story that covers centuries. It's a hard sci-fi narrative that explores humanity's long-term response to an impending alien invasion and the terrifying sociological laws governing a hostile universe. Now on to narrative fiction. One of my favorite authors in general is Neal Stephenson, and in my mind his masterpiece is the Brook cycle. A sprawling historical epic that weaves together the lives of alchemists, scientists, and vagabonds to chronicle the birth of the modern world through scientific revolution and global finance. Yes, the book can be a bit lengthy and difficult to read sometimes, I admit that. But a decade-long story that covers almost all continents and touches on hundreds of real historical events, it's just incredible stuff. Also from Stephenson is Cryptonomicon. This complex thriller connects the secret code-breaking efforts of World War II with a 1990s plot to create a digital data haven, exploring the deep evolution of cryptography and information theory. I read that one around 10 years ago and kind of fancy having a second read because I still have some good memories of it in my head. Now, fantasy, and here I have to mention Scott Lynch and the Gentleman Bastard sequence. This gritty, witty series follows the master con artist Locke Lamora and his crew as they execute elaborate, high-stakes heists across the dangerous underworld of a magically scarred world. This is a super fun heist experience set in a really, really great world. The last book in this series, called The Republic of Thieves, released in 2013, so that's more than 10 years ago, and fans have been waiting for the fourth one, which is allegedly in preparation for over a decade now. Lastly, and most recently, I want to mention The Will of the Many, released in 2023. It's a Roman-inspired empire where elites siphon will from the masses. An orphan must navigate a treacherous academy to uncover the secrets of a hierarchy he intends to destroy. The story arc is a bit similar to the Red Rising books from the beginning, so that is a nice closure of loop here. And that's all for today. I hope this kind of video was somehow interesting for you. I'll do some more book-specific deep dives in the future for sure. Thank you for watching, or in this case rather, thank you for listening. I'll put a list of all the books in the video description. See you in the next video. And now let me try to find a way to put out this fire now. It's getting hot here.